Alright, so this is part 2 of my Essential Guitar Lessons series. These videos address all the kinds of stuff that I find myself teaching in my lessons here in Vancouver all the time, and it's really important stuff. If you're playing electric guitar, if you want to play in a band, or if you just want to play for fun even and just expand what you know how to do, and then this is stuff that everybody needs to go through. So in this lesson we're going to talk about how to play the pentatonic scale on the entire fretboard. A lot of students will come to me, and they know how to play their standard A minor pentatonic or whatever key, but they know how to play one shape. And they have what I call I call this method the one shape and guess method. The one shape and guess method works like this. They can play this shape, and then as soon as they try to move around the fretboard more, they're really just guessing at what the next note should be based on kind of the sound. Now that kind of works, but you probably can imagine that the one shape and guess method ends up with a lot of wonky notes every now and then, right? Because as you're guessing your way around the fretboard, well, sometimes you're going to guess wrong. Of course, we don't want to have to guess when we're playing a solo, especially when we're improvising, right? We want to know exactly where that note is that we need. We want to know what it's going to sound like before we play it. At the very least, we want to be able to move around the fretboard without guessing at all, right? So I'm going to show you how to solve that problem forevermore. Now, this takes time. So keep this in mind. This is one short video on something that should probably take you 3, 5, 6 months to actually achieve. But that's okay. I'm going to give you the method, and if you keep up with it, believe me, you can do it. All my other students have done it, so you can do it too. So let's talk about how I approach the minor pentatonic scale shapes. Let's take the key of A. So here at the 5th fret, on my bottom string, of course, I have an A note. Now my method works like this. For each root, I have 2 pentatonic shapes that stem from it, shall we say. So you probably know this one. If you don't, let's just review it quickly. This is A minor pentatonic from the root, and I call this a first finger shape. I call it a first finger shape because my first finger's on the root, right? And I'm gonna go like this: 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8. Now, if you don't know that shape very well, practice that over and over and over and over again, up and down all the time. You gotta have that shape so stuck in your mind that you'll never forget it. You'll be dreaming about it at night. So that's a first finger minor pentatonic shape. Now here's what I mean by every root has 2 shapes that belong to it. So that root also has this shape that belongs to it. It goes like this: 3, 5, 3, 5, 2, 5, 2, 5, 3, 5, 2, 5. Okay? So I got those 2 shapes starting from there. And right? So let's pause a second and talk about what that means. Why can I go this way and this way, but they're the same scale? Well, they're actually the same notes, right? A minor pentatonic is just A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G, etc. So I can go A, C, D, E, G this way, or I can go A, C, D, E, G that way. They're the same notes. So the funny thing about the guitar is we have notes that are the same all over the place. It's a little different than piano, where it's just up and down. With guitar we have up, but we also have up. So it's kind of confusing as an instrument, but it's actually really handy. And ultimately, if you use this method and you just think of the shapes as visual shapes, you don't have to memorize that A minor pentatonic is A, C, D, E, G. That's much less important, but you do really need to know that this is your root. And your root gives you these 2 shapes, right? So here's what I recommend you do. You memorize these 2 shapes and you do them, basically you really take your time. Do like 1 a month. And I mean that. You want to know these shapes so well. You want to practice them up and down every day, and You want to use them or lose them. So what I mean by that is look up some jam tracks online and just play along. And don't worry if it doesn't sound good. Even if it just sounds like the scale up and down, it doesn't matter. As long as you're playing them with jam tracks and you're playing them up and down a lot, they'll really stick in your mind and you'll never forget them. Also, as you play along with jam tracks, you start to get to notice which of the notes in the scale shape sound good to hold on to, right? So, well, that one sounds good to end with, doesn't it? There's a reason for that because, well, it's actually another root. It's an A again, root. Right? It sounds like it resolves. Okay, so moving on, let's just review. You're going to take maybe 2 months for just this part alone, and you're going to memorize these two shapes. I call this first finger A minor pentatonic, and we can call this either pinky or third finger, depending on how you like to play this shape. You can do whatever you want, I don't care. 1, 3, 1, 3, 2, whatever. But that's like a third finger minor pentatonic or pinky pentatonic if you prefer to use your pinky there. Okay? Now, if we need to, before we move on to the next shapes, let's just talk briefly about changing keys. So that's A minor pentatonic, right? Because that's A. Well, I'm going to do the same thing if I change keys. Let's say I'm going to change to the key of C minor pentatonic, okay? So on my bottom string, if you've seen my other video, you'll know real quick, that's a C note right there. Or, like I said in my other video, you can count up. E, F, G, A, B, C, there's C, right? So now, I know my pentatonic shapes. The shapes stay the same. The notes might be different, but the shape is the same. So that's my first finger minor pentatonic shape for C minor pentatonic. Let's do my third finger minor pentatonic shape for C minor pentatonic. That's this. Right? It's really the same shape, just different notes. And again, you don't have to memorize the names of all these notes, but you do got to know where to start. And for that, you really got to know the notes on these two strings really well, right? Otherwise, it'll take you a while to figure out where to start. Okay, so now we know how to play two shapes, and we know how to move them to different keys. And do practice them in different keys, because what happens for a lot of students is they get so used to playing in A and E. All students love A and E. Well, they're common keys on the guitar, and we like them because they often correspond with the dots, right? And everybody likes to play on the dots for some reason. But let's be realistic, not all songs are in the key of A, and not all songs are in the key of E, so we gotta be able to move around. And hey, there's some songs in B flat, but it's not actually any harder. If you keep changing keys, what happens is you get used to just seeing the shape and not necessarily how it corresponds to the dots on the guitar, but just the shape. And when I'm playing, I'm always keeping that image of the shape in my mind. It never disappears. Whatever shape I'm in, it's there in my head. And that's how I won't get lost, and that's how I don't have to use the one shape and guess method, right? Okay, so now let's do two more shapes. Let's say you've been practicing those for a month or two, or whatever you need, doesn't matter. And you feel pretty confident, you've got them down. You know them, you can play them, you can do some basic soloing on them. So now, next step. Those shapes that we just did, the root was based on the E string, right? Now we're gonna do two shapes where my root is on the A string, right? So this is A at the 12th fret here. 12th fret of A is A, right? So now here is my first finger minor pentatonic shape for when my root is on the A string, right? Looks like this. It's a little different, right? And you'll notice I started here. But of course, there are notes below because, again, it's just the notes A, C, D, E, G. But I could go E, G, A, C, D, E, G, A, C, D, E, G. So the whole shape, that's my root, but I can start it here if I want. But just remember your root is there. That's important because that's going to help us find the shape, right? We know this is here, and we know this is here. That's actually the bottom of that one. It's not that, right? I mean, that's in the scale, but that's a G, not an A, right? We have this, A. Right? A. And now we have A. It includes these, but it actually starts there because that's my root, right? So now let's say you've spent a month practicing that up and down, soloing with it, changing keys, right? That might be A, but let's say we're in the key of C like we did before. Well, there's a C right there. So now my shape is the same as it was there because this is my first finger minor pentatonic with its root on the A string shape. That sounds complicated, but it's really not once it sinks in. Good, now I can play C minor pentatonic, D minor pentatonic, whatever I need, right? Okay, so here's the last step. Now you've spent another month soloing with this shape, and you're sounding pretty good on it, or decent on it. At least you feel like you really know the shape and you can find it when you need it and it's there for you. Here is the fourth shape, and that is third finger minor pentatonic shape when your root is on the A string, right? So this is the same A, just before I had my first finger on it. Now I'm putting my third finger on it, right? And here's how it works. I'm going to go from this A, because that's my root. I'm going to start there. Okay? And again, you're just going to remember it based on the way it looks visually. If I use the notes that are below, so I've got a D and an E and a G and an A there. This is a cool shape because you get 6 notes in a row that are like the same shape. You got bum, 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 right at the bottom there. Right? But remember, your root is actually there, it's not there. And I mean, you're going to remember that because that's how we find the shape, right? That's how we find the third finger A minor pentatonic from the A string shape. So you spend another month and you learn that shape and you start to sound pretty good on that. Now, you've got almost all of them. There's only one shape left. There's 5 shapes total that allow you to cover the entire fretboard. Now, the reason why I left this last shape for the last is not because it's not used, it's actually used a lot, but because it doesn't fit into my little system of root on the E string for these 2 shapes, first finger or third finger, root on the A string for these 2 shapes, first finger or third finger, because it doesn't have a root on either of these 2 strings. But that's okay, because we're just going to find it in relation to our very easy A minor pentatonic shape, the first one you probably ever learned. Back to the 5th fret, first finger, 5th fret, A shape is the easy one, right? Now, the one that we're going to do, the missing piece here, is this space right here, right? And it looks like this. Now, where's my root though? My root is actually way up there. So it's a little different, yes, but it's used a lot. It's used a lot when sliding from this standard shape. So a lot of times we'll go like this. Right? Now we're in this little shape, and sometimes people call this the box. This little 5-note shape that's got all your pentatonic notes right there. And a lot of soloing happens right in that little space there. But you want to memorize the whole shape, right? Because we want to be able to use that for for knowing the entire fretboard, right? So let's say you do one shape per month. That's 5 months of your life. In 5 months of your life, you know how to play the pentatonic scale up and down the entire fretboard in any key. Think about it, that's pretty cool. 5 months, that's a bit of a time. You could do it faster if you want, but make sure you don't jump any steps. Don't move on until you're really comfortable with each shape and you feel like you actually really know that shape and you can find it like that. Otherwise, you're just kind of robbing yourself and it won't stick, right? You want it to really stick so that you remember it forever. I think that's about it. Best of luck to you, and if you're in the Vancouver area, give me a shout. We can set up some lessons. Thanks.